of those last minute bugs.
Okay. I'm good to go, Ryan.
All right. It is 9:05. We'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Bigger, roll call, please.
Harrington.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Musgrave. Here. Brandon.
Here.
Kinnaman.
Here.
Kyer.
Here.
Delaney.
Here, we have quorum. Budget departments. First up is the Lake Improvement Fund.
That's us. Are you going to take it? Are you taking it or you want me to?
No, so this is a special assessment, has to do with the mill pond, and this is one that we do every year. And so there's really not much to it. What the expenditure is billed back evenly to the property owners around the mill pond, and the village, being the largest property owner, by the time you combine all of our individual pieces together. So if there's any questions regarding lake improvement. Am I right in having the impression that most, if not all, of the Mill Pond residents are supportive of the special assessment, that it improves the conditions on the mill pond? Yeah, so, I mean, to my knowledge, we have not received any complaints in the last few years regarding this assessment,
Yeah,
because it improves the quality of the water, of course.
sure. Okay.
And Aquaweed has not raised their prices in 5 years.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Still aquaweed?
Yes.
Yes.
Anything else on that, folks? Okay. Solid Waste Fund.
So, as you know, we've gone out for bid this year for refuse. We have received those bids, we've opened them. We will be presenting them at the next council meeting. Only because we had to project some numbers this time, we used the lowest bid for these numbers. Certainly doesn't lock council into making a decision to choose the provider that was not the lowest bid. We received 2. We solicited 5 plus open invitation to anybody. We received 2 bids. But this is based on the lowest bidder. This fund, even so, because our contract was an older contract and prices have gone up so much, this still is raising the special assessment for each property owner in the village by $40 per year, or a little over $3 per month. Like $350 or $360, right in that area. Just so you know, so you have that. So this number again is based upon the lowest bid.
And I know we'll talk about that more at the council meeting. Was one of those bidders Republic?
One was Republic, the other was Priority.
Okay.
So really in the waste hauling services, it's my understanding that Republic is number 2 in size and Priority is number 4. Priority is kind of a up and coming. So
Okay. And were they the lower bidder?
Priority was the lowest bid.
Okay.
Yep.
So, have you paid any attention to the progress on the tipping tax in Michigan?
Not specifically as it relates to the village. I know we've had those discussions with the waste haulers.
Because that could significantly increase this if they pass that fee on.
Yeah, well, I mean, so in the last, 5 or 6 years since our last contract went into effect, it's just simply inflation and the cost of doing business for them, I think, which have driven these prices up so high.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you look at, so if we project $240 per year per property, I think if you look in the outer township, as I talked with the haulers about what are the prices that a average household would pay in Holly or Rose Township if they had the same services that we had, and they would be between $250 and $350 per year. So, I mean, we're still lower
Sure.
than what they are because we have the numbers. You know, we have almost 1,900 customers.
That's a bill in the House, Mr. Kinnaman?
Yes.
And could you explain the tipping tax to us?
They are proposing an increase on the tax to unload at the dump, at any dump in the state. And it's currently like about $1 per whatever, a ton or a dump or whatever. And they're talking about taking it to 5. So it's a significant increase.
Okay, thanks. Question, yeah,
Yes, does that also,
If you wouldn't mind.
yes.
thank you.
Lori Lacy, 818 East Maple Street. Does this also include the yard waste and the recycling,
Yes, it's recycling every other week, and yard waste.
like it is?
Yeah, just
Right
like it
now.
is now.
Okay, all right, that's what I was just wondering.
Thanks. Anything else on solid waste? All right. DDA.
So with my budget, there we go. With my budget, there's not a whole lot of changes. The small changes that have been made were mostly due to price costs going up. Except for there are a couple that I wanted to point out that are on the third page, number 967000, project costs. That one up is going up significantly, so I just kind of wanted to point out what those items, what that was going into that. The items for that are just doing a little bit of maintenance on the old restrooms in downtown to kind of get us through till we get the new restrooms built, hopefully this coming year. The other part of that is also the building the new restrooms for the downtown. And then the 50,000 of that is for our grant project, that 50,000, not 50 million, grant that I got to do the placemaking project in the downtown. And then we want to this year repaint the light post in the downtown as well as up at Ganshaw Park. And so that's why that has gone up quite a bit there for those costs. And, you know, the DDA has, the last couple years, and really kind of since I've been here, we've been careful of spending some of our money just because we knew we had some of these large projects coming up. And so last year and this year, we were able to now use some of these funds to do some of these larger projects that have been needed to be done, and be able to do that now. And then the next one was, is 967101, which is project cost organization. I add a little more there because in the past we have done some volunteer recognition, but the organization committee would like to add a recognition kind of dinner event every year. We did it this year, and it kind of, you know, it upped our budget a little bit more. So I added that in for this coming year to be able to do that. Just because really at the heart of the DDA are our volunteers. You know, it's all volunteer based outside of me. Even our board is all volunteer. So we want to be able to recognize them for all the hard work they do and accomplish. And then the next one is 967202, which is project cost design. And that was just adding in the greenery that goes into the downtown and making sure that was part of our budget this year. Other than that, it's pretty much the same.
The only other big difference I noticed was page 1 on sundry. This year was significantly less than last year, but last year looked like it was just out of the norm for all of the other years.
Yeah, and I think those were, trying to remember what that, oh, that was the, I think with the, if I remember correctly, that is where we put in money from, where we did the tree project downtown. That's the, what the village portion was that went back to the DDA.
Thank you.
Yep.
You know, as long as we're talking about the next budget, and he mentioned the new restrooms that are planned for the downtown, there has been some comment, well, not a lot of comment, but a little comment about why not use the railroad depot that's going to be relocated as public restrooms. And there are a couple of good reasons why that is not being done. One, that building currently is on the National Historic Register as the depot, and in order to do that, you would have to create outside entrances into the building, because the plans are to have active offices, probably the DDA, perhaps the chamber. I mean, we don't really know for sure, but some tentative thoughts are to use that building once it's moved as a historical marker, you know, for the schools to visit. I mean, in the beginning, Holly does not exist if not for the railroads. And so, you know, that's pretty significant to our history. So it's important that that building remains like it is, but also if you have those other offices, oh, and a welcome center, but if you have those other offices, business offices working within that building, you certainly can't leave that building open until 8 or 9 o'clock at night for security reasons for those offices. And so the thought was to build separate restrooms that could be maintained. You could have the security of the building, but you could also build in some security features for those restrooms. That current restroom, while we do need to put some money into it this year, I mean, if you've been in it, it certainly is in need of an overhaul. And, you know, even though the vault has been very generous in allowing us to use it, and they do a lot of the maintenance on it themselves, you know, the fact is it's in a private building, and it's really not adequate to service the downtown. So we want to put adequate restrooms in to service the downtown. We think that's an important feature of our downtown.
Where would the new restrooms be placed?
Actually on that same parcel across from Battle Alley on Broad Street.
Okay, so like
where
right next
where
to.
the depot's going. So the idea is the restrooms would service the depot, would service the downtown, would service Crapo Park, and maybe we can get rid of a couple more nasty porta-johns, such as we've done here on this site.
Sure.
Was some discussion, I thought I heard that those would have been like right across from the hotel in the.
Yeah, they're gonna be offset a little bit, but it's that parcel that,
Up closer to the parking lot that exists rather than,
well, right against the parking lot is the proposed site for the depot. That is the site that's
Okay,
approved
you're-
by the National
okay, because
Historic.
you're talking in that wedge.
Yes.
That we purchased for the depot.
Correct.
It'll be down there.
Yes,
Because I had heard some discussion that it was gonna go like directly across from the hotel at that end, at the north end of
it will,
things.
yes. Yeah, well, closer to the Battle Alley and the hotel, right in that proximity,
Right
right
across
across.
from Battle Alley.
Yeah.
Across the railroad tracks,
In that wedge.
like by the big tree, the one big tree, kind of more in that area.
Well, we cut that down.
Well, it's gonna go closer to Broad Street.
There's no tree anymore.
There's no tree in,
Well, different tree. There was one tree that was removed, that sat right where the depot has to go.
right, yeah,
But at the opposite end of that, on the same parcel,
okay, but down in the triangle,
yes.
okay, okay.
Anything else on DDA? major roads.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Major roads and local roads are similar. They're broken down into 4 subsections. You have street maintenance, which is the surface, winter maintenance, which is snow and ice, traffic services, which are signs and striping, and then trees. The only thing, we do pre-bid, we use My Deal for our salt contract, so that's done every April, and then we get that pre-buy in October, and then throughout the year, we pre-purchase a certain amount, and we use that, so we're guaranteed, so far, 14 years, we've gotten the best prices. When I check with around people that don't use My Deal, you end up paying a little bit more, especially during harsh winters. We've been very lucky the last couple winters. The only thing I point out is, in major streets, equipment is, we lease the VACall and the tool cast, so some of that some of that money comes out of there, and then we've got, another service truck that needs to be replaced. Some of that will come out of that. Trees we have budgeted for, replacement. Yes, operating supplies at $2,500, so we'll look at replacing trees. This year, we have taken some trees down. We've worked with the DDA to do the downtown project, but we're also looking at some of our parks and some of our roadways also. So is there any questions on major streets?
Yes, as far as the trees, I know we did a walk through the Parks Commission down in Ganshaw, and there's, along the north end, almost all of those trees are marked to get torn down. Is there any plan to replace any of those?
Yeah, that was discussed at the Parks Commission meeting with DDA. DDA is paying to replace those trees.
I thought you were just doing along the roadway, not the ones that are back by. Okay.
And I know there's concern that those are larger trees, but most of them are cottonwoods. And I have several cottonwoods at my house. If I could afford to take them down, I would. But once they get that size, they have a tendency to drop branches, and anybody with allergies knows that in the springtime, once those bud out and it looks like it's snowing out in May and June instead of, and it's all that. So they're a dirty tree, and I understand that there's the size-wise, but they don't add a lot of value to the park once they get that size, so. Any other questions on major streets? Local streets is pretty similar. We have street maintenance, winter maintenance, traffic services, trees, pretty much the same thing. We take, our signage along the local streets comes out of there. We split that up when we do, we spent a lot of money lately on patching because our streets, we're working on that. But if there's any questions, and it's similar to, we have money in there for trees to replace along local streets.
Are those crosswalk signs for the school in the north end, are those here?
They are here. The delay on those was the posts that hold the actual signs were on back order. And then, when I finally got that they were gonna be shipped, I asked if we could get what I call Unistrut, the square signs, or the square posts, because that's what all of our signs are on. They did change that order, and it did take another couple weeks for everything to come in. So now we're just waiting to get those installed, and they should be done this spring.
Anything else on roads? Sewer.
Sewer's broken down into 2 categories: the collection system, which includes 13 lift stations and about 25 miles of main, and then the wastewater treatment plant. In the sewage system, this year, we're still looking to replace the Apollo Street lift station. The engineers and the contractor are getting the bids together for that. And project costs, there's money, we're looking at on-site generators. I know this was talked about when Doug Scott gave his presentation. Staff's trying to be proactive that if this money doesn't come through, that we're not waiting on grant money or loan money, that we still can keep moving forward with some of these other projects so that we don't end up in a storm. Currently, the village has about 2.5 generators that are 1950, late 50s, early 60s vintage that are hard to find parts for and hard to find people to work on them. So we've got those limping along for storms, so when we lose, our north end has a tendency to lose power more frequently than the rest of the village. So that's where we end up with that, with those up there. And we have 3 lift stations in that area and a water tower, so. Then the wastewater treatment plant, we're looking at doing the other clarifier. Last year, council approved the north clarifier for new paddles and equipment for that. We're looking to do that, replace some doors, metal doors that the frames have rotted out because of the environment they're in. And we're also doing some SCADA upgrades, the PLCs that we use there. The only way to replace those is to find them on Amazon or eBay and hope that they work when you get them because they're obsolete, so. Other than that, is there any questions on wastewater?
So if those are heading to obsolescence, what's the plan?
We're working, we've got it, we're doing it in 3 phases at wastewater because they have, well, we have 4 different computer stations or PLC stations throughout that plant. The first one we're doing is, we have the equipment for it. We're having some concerns with the contractor that's installing them. They're working still at the water plant. So we'll do that phase first, which is the major, that is pretty much the brains of the system, and then we'll do the outlying ones as we progress through it so that we don't try to take the plant all down at once. So that would not end well if we could not treat our sewage, so. Any other questions?
And water.
The water system includes 3 water towers. Again, about 25 miles of main on our water treatment plant where we treat for arsenic, remove arsenic from the system, which leaves us with calcium as our hardness, which everybody knows about that, the concerns on that. The only thing in there is equipment. Once again, the SCADA upgrades, some of the other equipment that I talked about, the payments are taken out of that because that's a shared use through most of the departments that I oversee. We are working, Doug Scott and Dixon Engineer, to get prices to remove the PD tower from service, but also maintain it as an historical site for the village. So the preliminary costs I got just to repaint it and stuff like that, we're looking at about $400,000. So you probably see that in the next couple of years. And also, we have to maintain it, so we have to have the ability to climb it, so there'd be some maintenance items to maintain that also.
So Brian, since you mentioned arsenic, I had heard a rumor, just people in town talking, that our arsenic levels, while within the legally acceptable limit, were possibly higher than ideal. You want to address that briefly?
Yeah, several years ago, well, probably about 16, 17 years ago, the state regulatory agency, which is now Eagle, reduced the limit from 50 parts per million to 10 parts per million. We test on a quarterly basis. We're usually between 5 and 6, so we're well below that action level. And what we do is we bond the arsenic to the iron. That's why there's no iron in our water, through chlorine. And then it goes through a media filter, and now that is removed, and then it's sent out to the system.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions on water?
Kind of related. I've had a few people call and ask about, do we have any type of alert system for overusage of water?
In their homes or
Is there something at the water plant that says, hey, this house is using thousands of gallons of water?
No, but we're looking at upgrading our reading system to a FlexNet system. And what that'll allow with the newer meters, the iPro meters, the plastic meters, they're called, for lack of better term, smart meters. It'll give us that ability, because right now, if you have that type of meter, we can come in and with our reading equipment, we can get 30 days of read 24-hour increments. So if someone comes in and says, you know, I don't use any water in the middle of the night, we can pull it up and say, well, between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., 8 gallons went through this meter. So something, a toilet's running, someone got up, when we can.
That was the question, was, you know, a toilet running, you're out of town, you come home, you got a $3,000 water.
Yes, we can go, I mean, unfortunately, it's after the fact, but we can, if they have this iPro meter, we have the capability of pull up. We say 30 days, it's sometimes a little bit more than that, but we can tell you every hour, how much water you use for 30 days. And it lets us, you know, people are, you know, we can come up and usually if they have efficiency toilet, it shows 1.1 gallon use. So we're like, you know, you got up in the middle of the night and you went to the bathroom right there, flush a toilet. So,
Thanks.
yep.
Brian, fines, forfeits, and penalties. Can you explain that a little bit?
Fines, forfeits, and penalties. Fines are like late fees for when they don't pay their water bill on time. And Debbie takes care of the billing, so I think it's 10% or 1%. Yeah, 10%. So someone has a late bill, they're paying a fine on that, you know, so we're not, you know, covering that, so, and then,
Okay, that's what I was wondering. If
yeah.
that was off the bills. Okay, thank you.
I have a question on contractual, the 818.000. We had an amended budget of 50,000, but yet we spent 106.
That is for the tower painting. They were supposed to bill us separately, and the contractor we used, they did 2 towers. They did the DPW tower and Quick Road. They waited till the whole project was done before they billed us, so there was some carryover, so, yes. I apologize, sir, that contractor was not the easiest to work with, so.
And then for Falk Road dump, it would be 967.055. I see that we had a budget of 40K for last year, but now we're taking it down to 25. Is there a reason that we're?
The amount of testing that was required last year has changed, so we won't need as much money.
Is there still plans to put a fence or something around there?
Yes, trying to find contractors. I've got one tree contractor, I've got a second one that still owes me a bid, and then fencing contractors, just to get them to return calls, so.
Right.
And that fence is from a grant from the state, correct?
Yes.
Does it have to be fencing? Like, say, could we just put up cameras?
No, that's what we put in for was fencing,
Was
so that's what
fencing,
we were
okay.
awarded was for security, for fencing.
And that was the recommendation from Eagle, that the area be secured with a fence.
Okay.
Is that the whole property, or just the frontage on Falk?
It's the frontage on Falk and then all the way down to the private property on that service drive to the north.
Kennedy's property? Kennedy's property's to the north?
No, it's,
I know it's changed hands, but that's
no, it's
Mr.
what's,
Kennedy's.
it's Cantu's on the southern, or the western end, and then it's, Taylor up front. And then there's another house back there, but I don't know who that is, so.
I'm familiar with a fencing contractor that might want to make a bid. Can I get your email address?
Yeah, it's bclawson@hollyvillage.org.
So before we leave water and sewer too, I just want to talk just real briefly about the revenue end of that. You'll be seeing shortly a request for resolution approval for the new fee structure, the rate structure for this coming year. Plant Moran, when they did our study a few years back, they've recommended a 2.7% increase each year. Staff, administration has recommended an increase of 2% each year. And that is going to be our request again this year. So it's less than what the Plant Moran recommendation is, but we think that it's adequate. And just so that you have a sense of what the numbers are, that 2% increase per unit or 1,000 gallons would take the cost from, currently it's $8.39 for water per 1,000 gallons to $8.56, so a 17-cent increase. And on the sewer end, it would take it from $13.98 per unit to $14.26, a 28% increase. And the reason that sewer is more expensive is because we're treating that water before it's returned back into the environment. So the total increase, if council approves the resolution, would be a total increase of revenue of $38,009 on the sewer end and $22,958 on the water end. So certainly, the village is not getting rich, you know, really not even keeping up with the cost of inflation on those increases. But increases, unfortunately, are necessary, but that's what they are, and that's what's built into your budget, just so that you know that.
Any other questions on water?
Any other questions or comments on anything at all from council?
I have just a couple of cleanup matters if council's done with any questions on the budget. So I just wanted to just cover a few things from last week and this week, just so that you have a total budget picture of what we're looking at from a staff perspective. And so we're in this beautiful building. Actually, this is the first meeting, right, in this building. So I think this building was a wise decision by the council. It's going to serve the community for many years into the future. So Victory Development Company and Mr. Iafano, they did a great job in putting this building together. Like any new construction, maybe Mr. Perkins more than anybody because he's in the business. There are little things that you see once you move in that will be taken care of on a punch list. And so we have a few more expenditures, the largest one being the parking lot. If you walked in, you saw the ponding in the parking lot. And so it's an old parking lot. So we're currently obtaining bids for that. And we'll be looking at that in the new budget year. And we have rain gutters on the building. So for the exterior, other than the landscape, those will be the proposed changes, you know, that we'll have regarding the building. You have in front of you, I handed out a packet that Ms. Bigger put together of HIA information. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but I just wanted to let you know that you have that. And I think that's a subject that council wanted to talk about, was HIA. Employee raises that is built into this budget. They are contractual raises with the unions. So last year, the DPW employees had an approved contract where they received a 4% raise last year. This year, they're scheduled for a 2% raise. Your other unions in the village being the police department with their command and their patrol unit, as well as the Teamsters. No, the Teamsters are covered in that 2%, as well as your department heads are scheduled for 3% raises. So well below the cost of living or in inflation. I think probably the average with municipalities is 4 and 5%, but we have those contractual raises. Your police department union and the Teamsters both open up for negotiations in '25, and the fire department, we begin negotiations with them on May the 6th of this year. Police car financing. Prior to 2010, when I started here, the village has been financing police cars. They buy 3 at a time. That is the plan again this year. You'll have a proposal in front of you, and either the mayor or the June meeting, State Bank is currently working on that proposal. They've done the financing over the last couple of years. We still think that that's the best method, but just so you know, that's what's built into your budget, and you'll be seeing that again. And then the very last thing I wanted to talk about, Chief McGee prior to Chief Watson, but I know Chief Watson has alluded to it too. They've talked about the age of the fire apparatus that they have. The main attack vehicle, being the ladder truck, is 34 years old. Gotten great service out of it, but just like us, they wear out eventually. And then the secondary engine is 25 years old, or in that area. And so we have been investigating some different options with that. We'll be bringing something to council for you to consider over the next couple of meetings. None of that fire department is included in this budget, but we think we have some options. So somebody asked at the last meeting, I don't remember who it was, about the second dispensary that is scheduled to go in this summer. I've had some recent discussions, even as late as Thursday, with them, and they are going to be beginning construction this spring. And so that will come online. Of course, with that comes on additional revenue stream from the state as far as sales tax, as well as their pledges, that they made, similar to Loom, where Loom pledged about $50,000 to the village, and it was split up between parks and scholarships through the police and fire departments, and then some general fund. Stash, which is the mother company for the second dispensary, are making similar donations. And as we get those details a little more firm, I told them that prior to their license renewal in June, that this council would expect a written schedule of progress, because I think that that's reasonable over the time that they've had the delay. I think they've had rationale for their delay, but from our perspective, you know what, you guys have issued or approved them a license. We want to see some action on that. And so that's kind of the progress report on that. Are there any general questions over anything that I brought up?
For when we buy the 3 new vehicles for police, do we end up selling those used vehicles and then putting that back into?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then your draft budget then will be given to you at the May meeting. So whatever we've talked about over the last 2 weeks, we'll give you the draft budget at the May meeting. You'll get your final budget in the June meeting. And again, if there are any significant changes in those, we'll report those to you each time when we give you those 2 budgets. So, hiya. So you have in front of you a packet. So the top sheet of that packet should be a request via email from Ms. Alvarado regarding the amount that they are requesting. The rest of that packet should be a copy of the bylaws from HIA, and those are bylaws that they imposed on themselves, just like any organization, operational guidelines. You also should have in there a resolution from prior council stating that they approve or approve the bylaws for the village. So that talks about what's expected and the commitment that the village has made. Now, I think in the years that the village made contribution through CDBG, I think you met that commitment. In the years that you didn't make, or not you personally, but the council did not make allocation through CDBG, you did not fulfill that. I mean, some of those years, simply the village was not able to do it financially. And I think that's the reason they stopped. I think Ms. Alvarado or maybe Ms. Brandon talked about it's been prior to 2010, like 2008 or 9, when the last contribution was made to HIA. And so that's just for your consideration. If you want us to add something to the budget, this is the time to tell us by consensus that you want something in, and then when you take official action, we will have it in the budget.
I would support having something in the budget for HIA, and I think they're asking for is reasonable, the 3,400 and was it 16?
Well, they're asking for 3,700. They're just saying the other municipalities give an average of 34. So let's say if we go 35.
Right, as a
You know,
round number.
exactly.
3,500. And, I would support an idea that as long as we're doing that, regularly, budgetarily, you know? So I would be all for 3,500.
I'd agree.
So, yeah, so I would just say this, and certainly you can't make a motion at this meeting, but we can do it by consensus. I would just say, just recognize that we forecast a revenue over expenditure of about $1,500, so that will be some money coming from fund balance. Now, as we continue to finalize our numbers as we go throughout the year, we in fact may find that our revenue numbers will be higher and will cover that. But if not, then it'll be a fund balance transfer in order to cover that deficit per se. So if I'm reading council correctly, then we will go ahead and add to the budget, so you'll see it in your May draft budget, a line item for HIA.
Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you.
And that's all we have.
All right. Anything else from council? Meeting is adjourned at 9:46.
If you have not looked through the building, if you didn't do it before the meeting, and if you want to look through the building now, you're welcome to do it. Just keep in mind that there are some offices that still have boxes because we just moved on Thursday. Debbie's raising her hand, her office is the biggest one. Last desk to move, last office to get set up. But we do plan on doing a formal ribbon cutting with the chamber probably in June. All right, very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
If you could leave your budget that you have now on the table, we'll collect those because they're gonna change a little bit when you get your next one in May. And then your one in May you can keep, and then the one in June, of course, is your final.
I was gonna say.
All right? But just keep in mind, yeah, it's not real.